Guys, so we're going to go over to Alison. We're going to talk about paleo. Yep. So what is a paleo diet? It's gaining a huge amount of momentum. You know, Pete Evans is a huge advocate for it and has a massive following. So what is a paleo way of eating, and what do you see the benefits of eating this way?
Okay, so a paleo diet is trying to get back to the way that we used to eat, eating more naturally the way nature and evolution intended. It's a way of uncovering what was already there. So paleo is a label. I like to call it like a structure or a template to the way you can eat. And there are, it draws on certain food groups. So there's meat, there's vegetables, there's nuts and seeds and fruits. But there is there's a reason, there's no coincidence that we have gotten to a point in our human evolution where there is so many diseases, so much ill health going on, and that seems to have coincided with when there were significant changes in how food was produced. And so there's a big emphasis within paleo on looking at that and learning from the past, and there's lots of, it's not necessarily all meat, and but learning from the past and applying that knowledge now to try and get back to the way things were before we've introduced a whole lot of health issues. So in terms of benefits, there's lots of documentation, lots of stories around people who had benefits from transitioning to a paleo diet. Similar to what Mason was describing, it's not a case of just stopping, your sad diet, your westernised diet, and eating this way. It's a transition. It takes time, and the way that you do it, you might start with a very basic template, and then you might reintroduce things that work for you slowly. And that's the premise for paleo. At the very beginning, a lot of people tried 30 days of just eating, meat, vegetables, a few fruits and nuts and seeds. That's pretty much eliminating grains, eliminating legumes, eliminating dairy, and then reintroducing. The diet is said to be an anti-inflammatory diet. It's immune boosting and it's nutrient rich from the range of foods that is included. And so the immediate response that people typically experience is weight loss because of the anti-inflammatory properties. Things like more energy, better mood, people who have skin conditions, I talk about how they go away quite quickly, gut irritations go away quite quickly, so aches and pains, migraines, headaches, the list goes on. It comes down to what works for you, and starting with a very basic template and then reintroducing what works.
Awesome. So, we're talking about a diet that essentially does include a fair bit of animal product or protein.
Yeah.
So let's jump into sustainability. So, there's been a huge conversation happening for a long time about how, eating meat really does put a huge amount of pressure on our planet. So what do you say to that? Obviously, because that would come up a lot in paleo.
Yeah, it does. If the ideal diet just came down to what is the best, the most nutritious way to eat, we would probably be all eating the same, but in reality it doesn't come down to that. It comes down to personal beliefs and choices. It comes down to what we think is right and healthy for us. It comes down to availability of food, ethical and sustainable practices, the environment, so many things come into play. Obviously with paleo, in its purest form, it does have a heavy reliance on animal products, so that is meats, eggs, and fats and things like that. It is a high fat diet. I eat a very high fat diet compared to the average Australian diet. Would you call me fat? Hopefully not. That doesn't make me fat. But the other thing about paleo is it is a mindful diet. 2.5 years ago, when the first evidence of this Paleolithic period and the way that we ate and hunted and gathered for our food, there was a mindfulness around animals and the right practices and not, when it comes to producing meat, not putting all these animals in a barn and agricultural practices throughout time it hasn't been for the last few hundred years that we've really changed things, and there's been a lot of unethical practices. So it is having that mindfulness of where your food comes from. I think from my personal perspective, I always like to know where the meat has been produced, whatever the animal product is, making sure that it's being produced in ethical, humane practices. Yeah.
And what does that look like for you?
What that looks like for me,
I suspect that it looks like that for me too.
What's that?
I suspect I'm asking because I think it's a good conversation to be having. Like, what does that that sustainable way of growing animals look like? What has you feel good about what you're
for starters, I buy my meat from farmers, from people that I know, and I know what practices they're using. I try and eat a big range of meats, so I'm not just supporting the production of one particular, cut of meat. I eat a lot of organ meats and things like that. So using whole animals, one of the big things in paleo is cow share and animal share. So where you're actually buying a whole animal with maybe a group of people and dividing it up, so it's more sustainable. You're getting more out of the meat. In terms of like urban environments and urban society and the way that we live now, and supporting those good practices, I think it's just really understanding where you're buying, where the meat's coming from. If you're buying in the supermarket, things like grass-fed, pasture-raised animals. If you're buying eggs, free-range, hormone-free, organic, labels are difficult because we were just having discussion about free-range before, and unfortunately free-range isn't exactly what we might think it is. So just being informed and asking the right questions. I go to the farmers markets every week. I know the people I buy from. I ask them questions. Where does it come from? I'd look at photos of where it comes from. So, and that's just me and my curiosity and wanting to know that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think that's that's a responsible way. Like, if you're going to choose to take the life of something, then to know. Like, I really want to know who's been nurturing that life. What relationship did that person have to the creatures that I'm going to consume? Like, I want to know my food's been loved, revered, and respected right the way down the track to the point that it then comes to me, and I can deal with it. Like, I did a catering job yesterday, and I cooked some fish, and I went to the fish markets 3 times to find the fish that I like to choose fish because it speaks to me rather than me say, okay, I'm going for this fish. And I wanted a fish to steam, and there wasn't one to steam that I felt was a sustainable option. So I went back, I went back 3 times last week, kind of going, okay, what's in season? And this autumn is the season of little fish run. So little fish are fabulous at this time of year, but when you're doing a catering job for 15 and you want to present something fabulous, you want something that's, way bigger than that. And, but I ended up with kingfish actually, and I got the whole fish, and then I got it home and realised actually whole fish won't work. I'll have to fillet it, because to cook it respectfully, you can't cook a kingfish and expect that you're going to get a beautiful result that everybody's going to love. So I then filleted the fish at 4 o'clock yesterday morning when I realised that in the middle of the night, because my intuition went, hang on, you can't do what you were expecting to do. So it's sort of the relationship, I think, that we have with our food is really, I think it really matters. And I ate some of that food today, I ate some of that fish today, and I had the feeling of kind of delight that I'd respectfully cooked it to the point that it was utterly delicious. And kingfish is it's a little bit tricky to cook that so that it's like that. And it was moist and tender and absolutely gorgeous. And I felt kind of grateful for it, grateful to it for providing me that, and really grateful that I have the understanding and the relationship to be able to produce it, and that I care.
Yeah.
I've just told you that I make a total volley, but that, and it's very it's personal. Like, and I know I'm a little odd.
I think we're all a bit odd.
No, I think, yeah, like, I like what you're saying. Like, the best thing to take on, like, throughout these discussions is you'll find there's a consistency of no wrong and right, and you take where you're at, and you honour where you're at, and then you make those little upgrades. Like, I'm sure you weren't always eating grass-fed. You eat conventional meat. Got to get off that stuff. Start making that upgrade to, like, you know, you can go organic, but you can go like exactly the same with like the raw foods. You can really go much further with that. You know, then you go pasture fed. Then you go and do something where you get the cow share. One of the one of those noble tribes, tribal law is that you do not take an animal's life without using absolutely every part of that animal. So you make sure the fur, the brains, the eyeballs, the bone, everything is being used. Then you can even take it further. You know, I'm really good friends with an Aboriginal shaman, and he lets me right inside to what goes on when you make a kill in that. Like, I'm sorry to get a little morbid on you, and when it's only like the raw food guys talking about killing animals.
Perfect.
But you know, this is how far you can take it. You know, like he's had, you know, they'll spear an animal, kangaroo, and he said, you know, he's a carnivore, and he says you go up and because it's not going to be dead after that first hit. You look that animal in the eye and you honour the spirit of that animal, and he said, it doesn't matter how many times you do it, you will always shed a tear for that animal because you connect with the spirit. And I think that's how far you can take it. If it's your absolute truth, you are meat is a part of your life. I mean, just know you can take it as far as you want. You know, like for me, meat fell out really. I was like a couple of months into just smashing raw food and juices and superfoods. I just was like deep end, and I was loving meat. I just came from Argentina before I went raw. So you know, I was really enjoying my meat eating career. And then it just naturally for me it fell away after a couple of months. Easiest thing I ever did. And you know, for me, and then I started doing the research into it. Funny enough, I've done more research about eating meat rather than not eating meat, but one of the things that was kind of like a happy coincidence for me that meat fell away is just the viral load that accumulates in the tissue and the organs of meat. Down that line, you got to realize animals, and especially those big animals, like in the big sluggish cows, they accumulate a lot of the toxins in the environment, and we've got a very toxic environment. So just know that, you know, the kind of the evidence and the viral theory that's coming out is virus is the bottom line of a lot that is degenerating us. So you've just got to be very aware of that if you're choosing to include meat in your diet. For me, I'm really thankful that I don't have to deal with that and what comes with eating that muscle and the organ of animal.